Hello, I'm Cheryl Brunette, and welcome to Maristone and today's class, Easy Finishing for Pullover Sweaters. You're going to learn some tips and some shortcuts and some skills that will make your sweater finishing easy, fast, and you'll have great looking results. I'm going to cover all three basic pullover sweater styles: the drop shoulder, the set-in sleeve, and the raglan. And I'm going to start with the simplest of the styles, the drop shoulder. Now, even if you don't make very many drop shoulder sweaters, I want you to pay close attention to this part, because this is where I teach the skills that apply to all the sweaters that you'll ever make. These are the pieces that make up a drop shoulder sweater. Most patterns have you make them in order. First the back, then the front, then the two sleeves. And when all four are completed, you sew them together. With our shortcut method, we follow the same order of making the pieces, but we join them as we knit. We start with the bottom of the back. Now here, there are usually about 10% fewer stitches in this ribbing than in the body. But you can add or subtract a few stitches here to make your finishing easier, and it doesn't affect the fit of the sweater at all. Your first tip is, if you're making a knit one, purl one rib here, cast on an odd number of stitches. That way you can begin and end with knits on the right side of the work, and when it comes time to sew up, you have an easy seam here because you have these two knits to contend with. If you're knitting a knit 2, purl 2 rib, you cast on a multiple of 4, which is how wide your repeat is, plus 2 stitches for the end. You start and end with a knit 2 on the right side, and then these 2 stitches get sewn into the side seam when you're done. Now, most knitters in the United States use what's called a two-tailed cast-on, and if you do, then this first row should be a wrong side row if you'd like this more knit-like side showing. This is a more purl-like thing. This is more finished, and I generally prefer to have this outside. If that's the case, then you begin and end with a purl on the wrong side on that first side row to establish your pattern. Once the rib is finished and it's time to increase to the body stitches, do it on the last row of the rib. Space them within the row rather than put an increase at either end. That way, when you sew up later, you won't have an extra bump on either side to contend with. We then work the back normally until we get to the armhole point, where it's useful to stop and mark the armholes. If we do it now, we save time later. To mark the armholes, you need a spool of contrasting color sewing thread. When you reach your desired length to the underarm, as they say, pick up the end of the thread and knit it together with your sweater yarn for 4 or 5 stitches at the beginning of this row. You do the same thing at the other end of this row to mark the armhole at the other edge. When you're finished with those stitches, snip it off, leave about 3 or 4 inches hanging. When the sweater's finished, you can snip these threads and pull them out. Once the underarm is marked, continue straight to the shoulders, and instead of binding anything off, slip everything onto a long circular needle, preferably a 24-incher, and as you do it, slip markers on between the shoulder stitches on each side and the neck stitches, so that you have the back and neck stitches and the shoulders marked, but nothing has been bound off. Then we set this back aside until we finish the front. You make the front exactly like the back, including marking the underarm point with thread until you get to the neckline. This is one common crew neck shaping. A number of stitches are bound off at the center. Then you do a series of every other row decreases. Each side is worked separately from here to the shoulder. Now, these stitches can go onto a holder or they can be bound off. I use both methods, but for the sample I'm going to show you today, I've bound them off. What's important to your finishing here are these decreases. What kind of decreases should you use, and where exactly do you put them? Most sweater pieces for pullovers are symmetrical. That is, if you drew a line down the middle of the piece, the two sides would be mirror images of one another. Just as the shaping is mirror imaged, the increases and decreases should be mirror images of each other, or should lean in opposite directions. The bold line shows some places where you use increases or decreases. If the ones on this side lean to the left, the ones on this side should lean to the right. Same here. This edge leans to the left, and so do the decreases. I work the first 2 stitches in regular stockinette stitch and work the decreases on the 3rd and 4th stitches. Notice the kind of line that's formed, a decorative ridge. Decreases are always more noticeable when they're moved in from the end 2 stitches of the knitting. In this sweater, the decreases lean in the direction opposite the edge. That makes the decreases look more straight up and down. I work these in 1 stitch from the edge and put that stitch into the seam. I usually leave at least 1 plain stitch along an edge that needs to be seamed so that it's easy to sew. Sometimes you'll want a decorative line and sometimes not. You decide for each project, but it's important that you know how to make the decreases slant the way you want them to. The easier slant to make is the right-leaning slant. It's accomplished by a knit 2 together on the right side and a purl 2 together on the wrong side. A knit 2 together is exactly how it sounds. You simply insert as if to knit, just grabbing 2 stitches instead of 1, knit them off, and there you have your right-leaning decrease. Likewise, a purl 2 together means you simply insert as if to purl, but catch 2 this time instead of 1. And that's your right-leaning decrease when you work it from the wrong side. The 2 left-leaning decreases are worked a little differently. You have to slip the stitches before you work them together. And if you can remember S and L's, and everyone can these days, then you can remember that you need to slip the stitches of the left-leaning decreases. The first one is on the knit side, and it's called an SSK, or slip, slip, knit. You do exactly what the letters say. You slip 1 knitwise, slip a second one knitwise, insert the point of the left needle in the front sew, and simply knit them off. There's your left-leaning decrease. The SSK has become popular only about during the last 10 years. Patterns that are older than that might give you the instructions to slip 1, knit 1, pass over. Anytime you see that in a pattern, you may use that particular left-leaning decrease or substitute the SSK. I think you'll be pleased. The slip, slip, purl, or SSP, is the left-leaning decrease from the purl side. Again, begin by slipping 2 stitches knitwise, 1 at a time, then return these 2 stitches to the left needle, come around and back, insert your needle, sew, and simply purl them off. And you have a left-leaning decrease. For today's sample crew neck edge, I've chosen to work the decreases on the very end 2 stitches and make them lean in the direction of the slant. Then the sweater is worked straight to the shoulders, and instead of binding off, we slip the stitches of each shoulder onto another circular needle or double-pointed needles to hold them. The next step is to join the front and the back at the shoulder seams by knitting them together. Retrieve the front of your sweater, lay it down so that the right side is facing you. Now get the back, lay it right over your front so that the wrong side is facing you. This is just like sewing. We have the right sides together, and now we're going to knit this shoulder seam together. Get a 3rd needle and insert it into the first stitch on the front needle, the first stitch on the second needle. Knit them together and drop them off. Do the same thing with the next 2 stitches. Now, pass the first stitch over the second. Again. Do you see where you're actually knitting these 2 together and binding off at the same time? I actually prefer to do this with a crochet hook. Insert it as if to knit into the first, into the second, pull a loop, drop them off the needle, and go ahead and pull that right through there. You continue this all the way across. You bind off the stitches at the back of the neck, And then when you get to the other shoulder, again, you knit them together and bind them off together at the same time. And the result is this. Continue across the first shoulder until all the stitches are knitted together. Then when you come to the back of the neck, if it's an adult sweater, bind off across those stitches until you get to the stitches of the second shoulder where you begin knitting the front and back together again to finish that. In an adult sweater, this edge helps to support the weight of the sleeve, so you want a nice firm bind off there. However, in a child sweater, children have proportionately larger heads and you want to keep nice loose stitches there, so put those on a holder rather than bind them off. Now there's one other thing I want to show you besides the beauty from the outside. This is your seam from the outside, and you can see that it's a nice straight seam. You need to pay attention to the tension of this bind off here. It's called the Goldilocks principle. If it's too tight, it will pucker. If it's too loose, it will droop. Instead, you want it just about as wide as the knitting when it's stretched, so that I can't stretch it any further. Okay? That's about as wide as a natural knitted stitch with slight stretch to it.